Hello and welcome to another pen video from me, Penultimate Dave. So this is my latest currently inked video, and you'll see here 10 pens that I have currently inked up. I'm going to go through these pens one by one, and then we'll do a writing sample so you can see these pens and the ink that I have inked up in them. So from left to right we have the John Twist Volcano pen. We have the Atelier Lusso Andromeda, and this is the King Cobra version. We have the Armando Simone Club Bologna Extra Arco Verde. We have the Omas Milord in the Wild Celluloid. We have an Omas Arte Italiana Paragon Grande. We have the Pilot Namiki Vanishing Point in the Radon Galaxy. We have a Delta Federico, a Visconti Camelot, a Visconti Ducali Palazzo di Sassuolo, and then finally the Atelier Lusso Carina in the Amethyst Fields. So let's start looking at these pens. So this is a pen that I've reviewed recently on my channel, and this is a pen that I picked up at the Northern Pen Show in April 2019, and this is the John Twist Volcano pen. And you can see here that this material really is quite captivating. I do like this material. This pen is made of Alumilite, which is a hybrid mix of acrylic or resin and other materials, but this is a really stunning pen. So you can get Alumilite pens made out of lots of different things. So you can have a basically sort of like a pine cone or wood fused with resin to actually provide a very nice texture and a very nice sort of difference in the material, in the acrylic. Now there are some downsides that you can get voids where there are empty spaces within that material, and that can make it a little bit more harder to try and fill those voids and also to turn those material into pens as well. But Alumilite is actually quite a nice material, and you can see some of the sort of bubbles that are appearing here in the material. So that's the kind of thing that you can really see in Alumilite. So you can get a lot more difference in texture, in swirl patterns. So it's really the next level up from acrylic. You can see there that material really is stunning. Not only the chatoyance there, but the variance there in that material. So this pen comes with just a standard John Twist nib. It's actually a Yovo nib, and you can see there that it is a steel nib, and it's a broad nib as well. So you can see there that that's quite a nice sort of nib. Now it does write very well. It's very smooth, and you'll see that in the writing example that I'll show you in a little bit. It's a cartridge converter pen. It actually fits in the hand quite nicely. I can post the cap if I really want to. It doesn't post deeply, but I find this is quite a lightweight pen. And I know I've had some questions on previous videos about sort of the weight of Alumilite. Alumilite tends to be around about the same weight of acrylic, but it really depends on the type of hybrid material that is being added to the acrylic or the resin that will make it either more lighter or more denser. But this is actually quite a nice size pen for me. A little bit of a cigar shaped pen, but I do like this pen a lot. So this for me was a pen that I really had to pick up at the Northern Pen Show because I couldn't let this one go. So that's the first pen. The second pen is my lovely Atelier Lusso, and this is the Andromeda, and I got this in the King Cobra, and that is Yes, a King Cobra. So this was a material that I handpicked. I had Erica Atelier Lusso turn this, actually procure this material for me after I had found it, and then turn this into this lovely Andromeda. Now the Andromeda is actually just a very cylindrical shaped pen. There really isn't any kind of shaping that goes on. You can see there the ends of the pen are effectively just cut off. So there really isn't a lot of extra work that goes into making these pens. So these pens actually tend to be a little bit more cheaper on Eric's price list because of that. But this was the material that I really wanted. I wanted a pen that had a lot of gold and silver and bronze type effect going on and looked a little bit more like a Raden style pen or a Urushi style pen. But when I saw this Cobra or King Cobra on there, I really liked that design, so I decided I would go with this. So this is, again, a Yovo nib. It's a broad nib again, and I do like these broad Yovo nibs. They are really nice to write with, very smooth, very consistent, and they're just all-round good pens, or good nibs, I should say. Like, they really do write well. I have some mediums and I have some fines as well. I have some stubs in the Yovo nibs, but I typically like the broad nibs better. I just find that they are more, I guess, more consistent. Not that the fines and mediums and the stubs are not consistent, but it's just something that I gravitate towards more. I like the writing experience more on these nibs. So I have this pen inked up as well. I'll show you the ink in a little bit. I also have my trusty Armando Simone Club, and this is the Bologna Extra Arco Verde. And if you know me, I tend to have this pen inked up a lot. I do like how this pen writes. So not only do I like the look of it, but I like the writing experience. And I think this is where a lot of pens sort of, we either love them or we hate them, or we dismiss them in our collections because we might like the look of the pen but we don't like how it writes, or we might like how it writes but we don't like how it looks necessarily. And we all have, or hopefully we all have, pens in our collection that we both like the look of and we like how they write. And this is definitely one of these high up pens in my collection where I really do like the look of it and I really do like how it writes. So this comes with an 18 karat gold nib, and it's the Armando Simone Club nib, and it is basically what they class as a magic flex. This only comes in one nib width, which is effectively a medium nib, but it writes more like a Western broad in a lot of cases. It has an ebonite feed. It's a number 8 size nib from Bock. So it's effectively the same or very similar size to, say, a Montblanc 149 nib. It's an oversized nib. And it's called the Magic Flex nib. To be honest, I was a little bit disappointed when I got my very first Arco Brown version because the nibs really don't flex a lot. There is a little bit of line variation, a little bit more than most gold nibs, I would say, but they really are not what I would call magic flex. So that's just one of the things. Like, there are some of my Magic Flex nibs are a little bit more flexier than others because I have a number of these now, but still they are nowhere near, say, a modern flex nib or maybe a Pilot Custom 823 FA nib. It's just the way it is. But irrespective, I really do love how this one writes. I love how smooth it is, how gorgeously wet it writes, and for me this is a beautiful, beautiful pen. So I've had that inked up. I also have a newer pen that I have inked up, and this is the Omas Malord, and this is the wild celluloid. Um, it is a gorgeous, gorgeous pen. Now this one has a lot more white or cream or ivory going on in this sort of pen, and it's a little bit more of a cracked ice effect, or a little bit more of a maybe like a lightning strike effect that's going on here. Now this was new old stock that I bought it, and I bought it on eBay. I actually won it in an auction, got it for a very good price. Although the price had started to go up, I was actually quite glad that the previous person that bid on the pen didn't actually bid much more. So I actually got it for about, I think it was about £5 more than they had actually bid. So this is an 18 karat gold medium nib from Omas, and like a lot of the Omas nibs, it writes really well, and it's one reason why I do like a lot of these Omas pens. Now, in the size of my hand, it's actually quite a good size there, and it's a piston filler as well. It's very lightweight. A lot of celluloid pens tend to be more lightweight unless they have a lot of metal in them, but this really is a nice pen, so I'm glad I have that. So I have that pen inked up as well. And then a pen that I got back in March, which is the Omas Arte Italiana Paragon Grande. This is a lot larger than the standard Paragon size. It's actually more the size of a Malord, and you can see there, in comparison to the Malord, it's actually just slightly larger, not only in terms of the length, but also in terms of the girth as well. But this is a lovely pen. This is actually a lot heavier than the Malord, but this comes again with an 18 karat gold nib, and that's a medium nib. And again, these Omas nibs really do write well. So I always wondered about Omas, and I always heard people say that how well these nibs write. I never actually realised until I actually managed to get hold of a few to try and write with, and then I realised just how well they did write compared to other pens. So I'm glad I was able to pick this one up as well. This is a really nice pen. It's a good size in my hand, and it's a good weight. It's as I said, weightier than the Malord, but I like heavier pens, and it's not massively heavy, but it does have this silver section here with a vermeil gold plating on it, but it does add a bit more weight to it. So I do like that, and it really is a lovely pen. Now, the only problem I always have problems with is getting this Arco pattern lined up. The next pen I have inked up is this pen, and it's my Pilot Namiki Vanishing Point Varden Galaxy, and that again is a bit of a mouthful. Now, I've always wanted one of these for a long time, and you can see why. There's this Varden sort of effect going on there with these Varden shells, or almost sort of chips going on throughout that body, and it really makes this pen shine. I'm not normally into black pens, but with all of that Varden, that abalone shell that's going on in there, in the body, and then with the lacquer over the top of it, it just is beautiful to look at. And because it's a vanishing point, it does have a click nib, and it's a very small nib that you'll see here, and that is an 18 karat gold, and that's a fine nib. But as with a lot of nibs, Pilot are not a Western company per se, so a fine nib really from Pilot is more like an extra fine nib in a lot of other pens. So really this is more of an extra fine nib for me. I don't normally go for extra fine nibs. I could only get this on offer with this fine nib or extra fine nib. So I do have another broad nib, so I can swap that into this pen if I want to. To be honest, I haven't yet, but this is another pen that I really have been writing a lot with. I tend to write a lot more envelopes and quick jottings because it's a click nib. Then I have this pen, and this is the Delta Federico, and I've always wanted one of these pens from probably about 3 years ago when I saw this pen first from Matt Armstrong on the Pen Habit. And he had the black one, and he had, I think it was a Federico Stantufo. And this is a Federico, and I managed to pick this up from a friend, Mishka, at the London Pen Club. She was looking to downsize as she was emigrating, and I managed to pick this one up. And it is a lovely pen. So it's a lovely cracked ice orange effect going on here that you can see. Beautiful. And it has an 18 karat gold broad nib on this pen, and like a lot of broad nibs I find lately, it writes really well. So this, in terms of the size of my hand, I like it. It's actually a more thicker, chunkier pen, but I actually like that. It also has a way of actually accessing the cartridge converter through the end cap, which also Leonardo pens now have as well. It's not a feature that typically I use. I prefer to unscrew the barrel so I can see how much ink is getting in or getting out of the converter, but it's a lovely pen. So I do like this pen a lot. The only problem I have is that the threads sometimes lock. There's a damage to one of the threads on this pen, so it can almost like cross thread if you're not careful. Then I have this pen, and this is one of my prized possessions. This is the Visconti Camelot, and I know I've shown this a lot on videos, but it's typically a pen that I have inked up a lot of time, and this is an absolute stunning pen. You can see here the chainmail effect going on this pen, the sword as the clip. It's just a really, really stunning pen. So for me, this pen is not only a beautiful pen to look at, but it's also a really, really good writer. So if I unscrew this here, you will see it has an 18 karat gold Visconti nib, and this is a medium nib, and it's got a lot of bounce to it, and it's also a wet writer, and it's as buttery smooth as you could probably get in a pen. And this is a real beauty, and I love that it's a power vac because you can fill the whole body up with ink. And it's just a perfect pen for me, and it has this really long section. The threads are very shallow. You don't feel those threads whatsoever. Only thing I wish was a little bit different is that section there tapers down quite narrow. I can write with it, and I do write with it a lot, but if I had the option, I would prefer probably that be maybe a couple of millimeters thicker in diameter. But it's a beautiful pen, and it's a pen that I really love writing with. Then we have this one, and again, this is another prized possession. This is a Visconti di Carli Palazzo di Sassuolo, and I love this yellow dawn effect. I think probably the first time I saw this was on what I thought was a Crimson Tide. Not the Opera Master, but it was the Crimson Tide material, but in a Visconti Millennium Arc. And I liked this material, and I'd also seen it on a Voyager as well, which I now have in my collection. But this is a pen, it's a demonstrator, it's a power vac, and it actually has the palace here engraved on the body of this demonstrator. along with those swirls and the yellow dawn pattern there. So this is inked up with an orange ink. It has the Voyager clip in it, and this has an 18 karat gold nib, and this is a really nice writing nib. Again, just like the Visconti Camelot, this nib really writes not only smooth, juicy wet, but also has a bounce to it as well. So for me, this nib is really one of my perfect nibs, just like the Visconti Camelot. I wouldn't want to swap that nib out at all. And to be honest, if I could put that nib on other pens, I probably would. The same with the Camelot nib. I could probably unscrew those nibs and I could probably put them onto other pens if I wanted to, but I choose not to. But if I had the chance, I'd have a lot more of those nibs because they are really nice writing nibs. And then the final pen is this Atelier Lusso, and this is the Carina, and it's the Amethyst Fields, and this was a material that I handpicked myself, and I do like this material a lot. It came out a little bit more darker than I thought it would, though, and a little bit more greener. I thought this would be more blue than the green, and this is how a lot of custom pen material will work out, is that you see the blank, and every blank is different. So maybe if you're looking for a rod blank on a website, that will probably be very different to the rod that you receive. But also, not only the colours, but also by the time you polish it up, it can actually transform into different colours or a different effect that you saw on the original rod pattern. And I don't dislike this. I actually do like this pen a lot, but I thought it would be a little bit more blue than green. And I guess it is a little bit, but it's more, I'd say, a darker green there. I love the tie clip that Eric put on this pen. It really is a beauty. And with all of Eric's pens, as you know, I love Jowo nibs. So this is a Jowo broad nib. It's a steel nib. It writes smooth, it writes wet, and it writes consistently. So for me, this is a pen that I, again, do like. It's a good workhorse pen for me. It's the right length, it's the right diameter and size, and probably the right weight. Maybe a little bit lighter than I prefer, but I find that I don't get any hand cramp when writing with this. Sometimes I do get hand cramp on heavier pens. This is a really beautiful, stunning pen. So it's a pen that I do write with a lot. But you can see there, this material is really quite stunning there. That you see all that chatoyance that's going on in the body. So that's the 10 pens I have currently inked up this week. And I think let's go into a writing sample now. So the first pen I have inked up. Do a swatch first. This is the John Twiss, or Twiss pens, and this is the Volcano, and it has a broad, steel nib, and the ink that we have inked up in this today is Diamine Poppy Red, and this is an ink that I've had inked up in this pen for really since I've got it. I will probably think about putting another red into that pen, but for me that is a lovely red that I think matches the pen really nicely. The next pen, I'll do an ink swatch as well. You can see this is a very wet nib. So this is an Atelier, and it's a Lusso Andromeda and it is the King Cobra, and it's a broad nib and it's a steel nib. I'm running out of space there, so I won't put steel. And the ink in this pen is Diamine Skull and Roses, which is a beautiful ink. But you can see there that that ink is very wet. So that nib is a very wet writing nib. Then we have the lovely Arco Verde. So this is again a super wet nib. So this is the Armando Simone Club, and it is the Bologna Extra Arco Verde, and it's, I'm going to put a medium nib, it's a Magic Flex nib. And then the ink that I always have inked up in this pen, because it matches it perfectly, is Ackerman Bezuren Woodglon. And it's just a beautiful ink compared to that pen, and I really think it's a perfect ink for this pen. I've tried a few other inks, a few other green inks in these. I've tried Ackerman Deneveg, and to be honest, as much as I like that ink as well, this ink is the best ink that I've found so far. And then we have this pen, and this is an Omas. This was a newer addition to my collection. And I have this inked up with a red ink at the moment. And it's quite like a pastel ink. But hopefully you can see here that this nib is still quite a wet writer. Not as wet as the Armando Simone Club, but it's still quite a wet writing nib. So this is an Omas Milord. And it's an medium nib, and it's an 18 karat gold nib. And the ink in here is Lamy Red, which is actually quite a pale pastel type of red ink. And it's not an ink really that in the past I've used a lot of, but I've started to write more with this ink. And then the next pen is another Arco, and it's an Omas Arco. So, again, this is another very wet nib. And if you know me, you know I like my wet nibs. So this is the Omas, and it's the Arte Italiana. And it's a Paragon Grande, or Grand. And it's a medium nib, and it's an 18 karat gold nib. And the ink in all of my Arcos, and I probably need to change this, and I probably will, but I have Ackerman SBRE Brown inked up. I will probably actually put Diamine Ochre in some, maybe even Jehaban Lee Dete. That's another nice brown. Possibly even Mont Blanc Toffee Brown. I will probably start swapping those around a little bit. The next pen is the lovely Rawdon pen. Now, this is a fine nib, and you can see how fine this nib is, but it's really, as I mentioned earlier, more like an extra fine nib. And I'm not really one for extra fine nibs. Like, they're great if you really need to write small, but I rarely need to write small. Now and again I might have to write very small on an envelope because there is a very long address, but I don't normally need to write small in notebooks, and I tend to use A5 notebooks. If I was using A6 notebooks more, or A7, then probably I'd use these a lot more than I do. So this is the Pilot, and it's the Namiki, and I think it's starting to run out. Hold on a moment. Yeah, so I am actually running on fumes on this pen because I've been writing with it so much. So this is the Namiki Vanishing Point. I wonder if I can actually get to writing the end of this before it runs out. It's the Raden Galaxy. I just primed the nib a little bit there. And it's an 18 karat gold, and it's a fine nib, although really it's an extra fine. And the ink in here is Diamine, and it's Maureen. But that is a lovely ink. And I will try and show you here. I don't know if I can see it. If you'll see it on camera here, but there you go. Look at the sheen on that ink. That is crazy, crazy sheen. And that's because the pen is getting low and it's actually quite concentrated as well. Probably some of the water in the ink has evaporated as well, making it more concentrated. And then we have this lovely orange Delta. And you can see here again, this is a very, very wet writing nib. So it's the Delta, Federico, and it's a broad nib, and it's an 18 karat gold nib. And then the ink in here is Pilot Iroshizuku, and it's Yuyaki. And then we have my lovely, lovely Visconti that I really do love a lot. And this is, again, a very wet writing nib. You can kind of see I like wet writing nibs. So this is the Visconti Camelot. It's a super wet fire hose of a nib. And it's a medium nib, and it's an 18 karat gold nib. And the ink in here is Mont Blanc Lavender Purple. And it is actually quite a dark ink in this pen, but it's a super writer. I always like having that ink mixed with that pen. I then have this, again, another lovely Visconti. And this is a very, very nice writing nib. So it's the Visconti, and it's the Ducali Palazzo di Sassuolo, and it's a medium 18 karat gold nib. And the ink in here is Sailor Gentle Apricot. And then the final pen is this Atelier Lusso. And again, following that same theme, It's a very, very wet writing nib. It's a broad nib as well. So it's an Atelier Lusso. It's a Carina, and it's in the amethyst fields, and it's a broad steel nib, and the ink, and this is an ink that I really have come to love a lot, Diamine Marine. It's a beautiful ink. It's that kind of like teal colour, but it really is, it's kind of between a teal and a turquoise ink, more green than blue, but it's a really, really lovely ink. So, I think let's just look at the inks here. We have the John Twiss Volcano with a broad steel nib, inked up with Diamine Poppy Red. The Atelier Lusso Andromeda King Cobra in a broad nib, inked up with Diamine Skull and Roses. An Armando Simone Club Bologna Extra Arco Verde in a medium nib, inked up with Akamon Bazoodan Woodgrown. An Omos Milord in a medium 18 karat gold nib, inked up with Lamy Red. An Omos Arte Italiana Paragon de Grande in a medium 18 karat gold nib, inked up with Akamon SBRE Brown. We have a Pilot Namiki Vanishing Point Varden Galaxy, which really is an extra fine 18 karat gold nib in Western terms, inked up with Diamine Maureen. We have a Delta Federico in a broad 18 karat gold nib, inked up with Pilot Iroshizuku Yuyaki. We have the Visconti Carnot in a medium 18 karat gold nib, and that's inked up with Mont Blanc Lavender Purple. We have the Visconti Ducati Palazzo di Sassuolo in a medium 18 karat gold nib, and that's inked up with Sailor Gentle Apricot. And then we have the Atelier Lusso Carina Amethyst Fields in a broad steel nib, inked up with Diamine Marine. So there you have it. That's my currently inked video for this week. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next pen video. Bye bye.